The sniper war claimed hundreds of thousands of lives, but it all started because Britain and the United States voluntarily turned their best weapons into scrap metal. 1918 saw the world dismantle its deadliest shooters. 1939 saw those same nations walk blindly into an absolute slaughter. When the armistice hit, the British Army possessed peak marksman capability. They had specialized rifles, custom scopes, and killers who rarely missed. Months later, High Command tore the entire system apart. Armorers stripped the heavy barrels down to bare parts. High-grade military glass piled up on wooden shop counters. Civilian hunters bought the finest telescopes for spare change. 4 years of bloody, hard-earned expertise evaporated into nothing. The American Army immediately did the exact same thing. The cause was pure arrogance. The generals hated the sniper. Officers raised on noble cavalry charges despised the hidden shooter, so they eagerly erased the discipline to maintain their honor. They considered picking off individual targets from the dirt to be an ungentlemanly trick. They chose elitist snobbery over battlefield lethality. They paid for that pride in blood. By 1939, British and American infantry entered combat with zero precision capability. German marksmen punished them mercilessly for the oversight. But Germany ironically fell victim to the very same peacetime blindness. The military machine that terrorized the trenches had also dropped its elite sniper units. They marched east. They met Soviet crosshairs. The German army would not resume top-level sniper training until 1943. While the German command forgot their old skills, in June 1941, they walked right into a custom-built trap on the Volga River. Why did the Luftwaffe turn the city into rubble? They thought it would make advancing easier. Heavy bombs smashed brick. Explosions gutted entire blocks. Thousands of tons of steel hit the streets. Pulverized concrete and ash choked the air. The generals expected to soften up the defense. Instead, they forged an impenetrable fortress. The sheer tonnage of dropped bombs did the Red Army's heavy lifting. Digging millions of urban sniper bunkers by hand was physically impossible, but the Luftwaffe delivered a perfect ambush landscape for free. The physics of destruction dictated the new rules. Shattered walls provided perfect cover. Collapsed floors hid firing angles. Every twisted steel beam cast a dark shadow. The Germans called it the Rat War. Infantry had to clear the debris room by room. But you cannot fight invisible enemies. The attackers lost their edge. They simply became moving targets. Years after the battles ended, patrols still found mummified corpses tied to the high branches. The sniper hell waiting for American troops wasn't in European rubble, but in the dense canopy. Shooters literally strapped themselves to the trunks. The landscape dictated an insane set of survival rules. If a sniper took a fatal hit, he wouldn't fall. The body stayed anchored. The position remained completely hidden. The Japanese perfected this system while fighting German-trained marksmen in Manchuria. By 1941, every infantry platoon deployed one dedicated sniper. They operated on almost nothing: a handful of rice, a canteen of water, absolute patience. Men rigged small wooden chairs high in the foliage, sitting motionless in the heat for days. The jungle swallowed them whole. Nature provided the ultimate armor. On Iwo Jima, shooters used the volcanic rock and spider holes to fire, vanish, and strike again from the rear. They hunted medics and officers. A single careless salute pointed out the highest rank. The psychological terror quickly mutated into sheer hysteria. Paranoia dictated combat. The deafening crack of anti-tank guns firing grape shot shredded the thick jungle canopy, raining splintered wood and torn leaves onto the frantic squads. Green troops made the fatal mistake of hitting the dirt and freezing. Motionless men simply gave the hidden shooters an easy target. The environment stripped away the last rules of warfare. The dying detonated hidden grenades. The dead lay rigged with tripwires. Fake surrenders lured medics straight into the kill zone. Allied soldiers loaded their weapons and stopped taking prisoners. While the West buried the slaughter of the First World War in archives, one nation took notes. Why did the Soviet Union refuse to abandon snipers? They remembered their colossal losses from German bullets. In the trenches of that first global conflict, The Russian Empire deployed exactly 0 dedicated marksmen, not a single trained shooter. German and Austrian snipers picked off Russian infantry with absolute impunity. Soldiers bled out in the frozen mud. They never even saw the muzzle flash. The surviving commanders swallowed this humiliation. They decided to rewrite the rules. A sharp divide split the military world. British and American generals dismantled their sniper units. They packed away the scoped optics. The Soviets went the other way. Throughout the 1930s, they built a massive network of sniper schools from the ground up. Marksmanship transformed into a state obsession. Ordinary citizens earned millions of Voroshilov sharpshooter badges. Factory workers learned to calculate windage, bullet drop, and camouflage. The Red Army forged the most prepared force of specialized killers on the planet. They just needed a live firing range to test the machine. That opportunity arrived in the deep winter of 1939. On November 30th, Soviet troops crossed the Finnish border. Yet in November 1939, this fine-tuned Soviet machine slammed into a single Finnish farmer. They brought tanks, they brought aircraft. It did not matter. Simo Häyhä hacked their entire tactical system using nothing but an iron-sighted rifle and cold logic. He refused to use optics. Glass fogs up in the freezing cold, and a single reflection of sunlight spells instant death. A scope also forces a shooter to raise his head. Häyhä stayed low. He crawled into the drifts before daybreak. He remained completely motionless until nightfall. He held snow in his mouth. It cooled his breath and stopped the visible vapor. He pressed his barrel down. The crunch of densely packed snow in front of the muzzle meant the powder gases would never kick up a revealing white cloud. He became invisible. The Soviets pushed back. They dropped mortars. They leveled entire grid squares with heavy artillery. Then they sent their elite marksmen to hunt him down. It ended in a sunset duel. The Soviet sniper decided the freezing dusk was safe and finally stood up to leave. Häyhä, perfectly blended with the ice, caught the dark silhouette in his open sights. A bullet through the head. The math was brutal. 500 dead over roughly 100 days of combat. That meant an average of 5 confirmed kills every single day in the extreme cold. Finnish army documents officially recorded 259 of them coming strictly from his bolt-action rifle. He was unstoppable. Until an explosive bullet smashed into his lower jaw. Half his face vanished. His own squad threw him onto a pile of frozen corpses. Then, someone saw a boot twitch. He woke from his coma on March 13, 1940, the exact day the peace treaty took effect. Doctors performed 26 surgical operations to rebuild his face. He lived to age 96. The lessons of the Finnish War mutated into the sadistic doctrine of General Vasily Zhukov in Stalingrad. A German infantryman hauls a jug of water across the rubble. A rifle cracks. The soldier drops. He writhes on the broken bricks. The echo of his frantic screams bounces off the shattered concrete ruins. But the hidden shooter does not finish him off. He just waits. He watches the bleeding man through his scope. When 2 medics finally break from cover to drag him back, the sniper shoots them too. Empathy became a fatal weakness. Zhukov commanded the Soviet 62nd Army and turned this psychological terror into official strategy. His core survival rule was simple: hug the enemy. Soviet troops had to advance and fight at a distance of 50 to 100 meters. This trapped the Russians deep inside the lethal blast radius of German shells. If the German High Command called in heavy artillery strikes to clear the sector, they would instantly vaporize their own frontline infantry. The big guns became useless. Zhukov built a strict kill list for his shooters. Who did the sniper kill first? Not the general with the pistol, but the artillery spotter. Dead spotters blinded the enemy guns. Officers died next. They exposed themselves by pointing and yelling. Then the veteran sergeants fell. The German army could draft fresh privates overnight, but losing a combat-hardened squad leader crippled an entire platoon. Finally, the crosshairs found the machine gunners, radio operators, and the desperate men fetching rations. Inside the dusty wreckage of a collapsed factory, a Soviet marksman squeezed the trigger. The bullet smashed through the binoculars of the lead artillery spotter. To dodge that exact crosshair, German troops found a sickening loophole. They stopped fetching their own water. Instead, they sent the starving orphans of Stalingrad. Small boys walked down to the Volga for a promised crust of bread. Soviet commanders saw the tactic. They issued a cold directive: shoot the children, cut off the enemy water supply. The shattered city erased every human boundary. Artillery felt like bad weather. A sniper was a personal execution. Someone studied your face through a lens, decided you were worth a bullet. Frostbitten fingers turned the scope dial. A sharp metallic click vibrated through the rifle stock. Then came the dark. This invisible threat broke the German infantry from the inside out. Men simply refused to lift their heads in the daylight. This total psychological breakdown came from technology we would laugh at today. Modern hunters use gear 10 times as powerful just for weekend sport. Soviet marksmen paralyzed entire battalions with primitive glass. Their standard scope offered bare-bones vision, 3.5 magnification. That generated a complete state of animal terror. But the invaders looked through even weaker optics, 1.5. The silly Zaitsev racked up 225 kills through those lenses. But the shooters themselves broke from the inside out. 40 kills in his first 10 days meant Zaitsev tracked and executed 4 people every single day inside a ruined city. Others pushed the limits even further. Sergeant Fedor Pikov confirmed 344 kills. Sergeant Mikhail Marovichenko hit 210. Why did the enemy torture captured snipers to death? Because every shot was a personal choice, not a blind accident. The enemy executed anyone carrying a telescopic sight instantly. But the real torture started long before capture. The physiology of the hunt destroyed the body. The Stalingrad winter dropped temperatures to lethal lows. Shooters lay perfectly motionless in the freezing rubble for 8 or 10 hours without making a single sound. They could not move to relieve themselves. They could not shift their weight to get the blood flowing. They just froze. Then the scope did its work on the mind. Iron sights hide the faces. Optics dragged the sniper right next to the target. A shooter observed a man for hours. He studied his habits. He watched the German eat. He watched the target pull out a piece of paper and write a letter home to his family. The sniper humanized the enemy completely. And then he pulled the trigger anyway. The bullet destroyed the target. The scope destroyed the shooter. After the war, they stayed silent. You feel the heavy iron weight of 2 fragmentation grenades on your belt. The first is for the enemy. The second is for yourself. You pull the pin and hold it against your chest. This was the darkest math of the Eastern Front. A reality forced upon the 2,000 Soviet women sent into the meat grinder with sniper rifles. 75 to 80% of the entire roster died. Between 1941 and 1945, these women were not medics. They were purpose-built killers. And their mortality rate was significantly higher than the average casualty numbers for regular infantrymen bleeding out in the trenches. Nazi ideology could not process them. To the German command, a female shooter was a disgusting glitch in the natural order. Field Marshal von Bock made the hatred official. He issued a direct mandate. His men had to execute every captured female Soviet soldier on the spot. Capture guaranteed a slow, agonizing butchery. That is why they never surrendered. Tatiana Baramzina was a kindergarten teacher. Then she picked up a rifle. 36 confirmed kills. She volunteered for a suicide drop behind enemy lines. The Germans overran her unit. Tatiana stayed behind. She defended the wounded soldiers to the very last bullet. 20 Germans dropped in the mud before her rifle clicked empty. The SS took her alive. They wanted troop numbers, but she refused to speak a single word during the interrogation. When Soviet troops finally recovered the area, they found a mutilated corpse. They only identified her by scraps of clothing and personal effects. The system chewed them all up. Rosa Shanina volunteered at 14. She caught a fatal bullet at 20 while shielding a wounded officer with her own body. Her mother felt no shock. She asked how a girl who shot over 50 people could ever live a normal life anyway. Klavdia Kalugina enrolled at 17. 257 kills later, she came home. She was 21 years old. Her hair had turned completely white. Ludmila Pavlichenko racked up 309 kills. The Germans called her a demon and hunted her relentlessly. Shrapnel tore open her face. The Soviet High Command could not risk losing their ultimate propaganda weapon. They dragged her off the front line and evacuated her on a submarine. 90% of the defenders dropped dead or wounded in 5 days. This slaughter at the Pischelsdorf bridges exterminated an entire generation of local youth in less than a week. By December 1944, the sniper war hit absolute rock bottom. German children looked through the scopes. Why didn't these children retreat? They lacked the survival instincts of an experienced shooter. They had only blind ideology. The Third Reich was collapsing. Generals threw 40,000 Volkssturm fighters into the meat grinder. 5,000 Hitler youth marched alongside them. The regime did not bother with complex tactics. They simply turned brainwashed boys into disposable sniper turrets. A 14-year-old boy grips a Carabiner 98 rifle. The heavy steel helmet constantly slips over his eyes when he tries to aim. He pushes the cold metal back. He refuses to abandon the position. He just fires blindly into the rubble. Advancing Allied troops cross the line of sight. They finally realize who is shooting at them. The soldiers are forced to return heavy fire and kill children. A real sniper knows restraint. He takes 2 precise shots and vanishes to fight another day. These boys stayed put. They pulled the trigger until the ammunition ran dry or an explosive shell buried their nest. Out of 5,000 kids sent to the river, 4,500 bled out on the concrete. The Second World War remains the deadliest era of precision killing in human history.